Unshackled. The old man rose up from a tranquil sea, glistening and silvery in the tide of night. White hair, crevices at the jawline, furrows across the forehead, and a puckered softness at the eyes marked him as old. But his neck was firm, and the muscles of his arms, legs, and torso looked like cords of rope in the moonlight. His dark gray trunks dripped salt water as he stalked sands that softened as they climbed toward the grand structures on the other side of the boardwalk. His stride was long, his gait certain, his eye stern. The ocean's vigorous breath had quieted for his arrival, but now the currents swelled and raced sideways, waves slapping down at odd angles as if the axis of the world had tilted. At the railing, volunteers sat on benches and clutched tin cylinders, soliciting donations for what everyone eagerly agreed was a good cause. Silent men with mournful faces guided rolling chairs along the cushioned boards. In the hotel's rectangular Olympic-sized pool, chlorinated water turned silky in the overhead lights as towering spectral shadows sealed off the building's broad-angled wings. Rows of folding chairs had replaced the loungers on the concrete decking, the cabana crew having ordered everything as if for military review. A city official took tickets at the gate, where a bulky policeman hovered to discourage crashers. A girl with long, lustrous brown hair and a look of unwavering scrutiny watched from the third-floor balcony that extended the length of the adjacent children's seashore house, whose red brick walls supported a flat roof. She had a bird's-eye view and the visual acuity of an eagle. There was a trace of haughtiness about her, but mostly she left an impression of strength, almost fierceness, with an altogether different expression just below the surface, one that had to do with wounds suffered and labors extended. She had marveled at the old man's ability to tame the elements and watched him until he disappeared beneath the bulwarks. She knew him as well as her own soul, though for a long time he had come to her only in dreams, until now. For she was wide awake, and she'd seen him emerge from the ocean, and now she spotted him anew at the boardwalk railing as he looked up at her, his impossibly blue eyes cutting through the early nightlight and locking her gaze. "It's time," he whispered. She heard the words as if they had been shot through a bullhorn to reach only her ears. A chill and an exaltation raced through her, simultaneous and dizzying. "You should come inside soon, Victoria," said the nurse, whose uniform glared whiter than foam. "It's damp out here. I don't want you catching cold." "Vicky," the girl mumbled, goose-pimply but undaunted in her thin cotton shift. She slid her eyes from the old man to the pool sprawling below and back toward the beach, her hip-high metal brace glinting in a shaft of light. The surf roiled, and a fitful wind danced across the sands as a gauzy drifting cloud left the moon a dim bulb. Her long hair leaped across her eyes and fluttered down her cheeks. As she peered at nature's raw power, she pressed one foot against the bottom rail, flexing the knee of her good leg. With the exception of the encased limb, she had the muscle tone and budding shape of a healthy young woman. She sensed that an athlete's physical prowess lurked within her. Her task, she realized, was to free it forever from the strictures imposed by fate, and she watched the activity below with the keenness of someone who believed that was possible. At the pool, a dozen swimmers, swaddled against the evening chill, shook their arms to loosen muscles and encourage blood flow. One of them wore a white rubber cap tight to the skull. Tossing their towels aside, they dove arrows straight into the water and swam leisurely laps, then hoisted themselves out, imprinting the concrete apron with footprints that quickly turned shapeless. The packed crowd stirred when the old man appeared by the diving board. The women primped and pancaked, the men frisky in sports shirts and summer tans. A self-important sports writer from the Island Press jerked forward in his poolside seat, eyes darting with suspicion. An announcer spoke into a microphone wired to the public address system, his voice reaching 2 to 3 blocks in either direction along the boardwalk as he introduced the hotel's general manager, the president of the Hoteliers Association, the mayor, the chairwoman of the Ladies' Auxiliary, and finally, the dozen competitors primed for the annual Island Swimming Championships. They rotated their heads in a tight spiral to relax their necks, as if possessed by music only they could hear. All except for the old man, who stood apart, motionless, like a tree somehow insulated from a windstorm. The iron in his expression was a challenge cast at the nighttime crowd assembled to see him, an assertion that he was still every inch the champion swimmer he had been in his youth. But most of them needed no further convincing. They knew that he would win the all-around, as he did every year, as he would for as long as he remained at the helm of time. In the early years, there had been a betting pool and wagering was brisk, but the meet soon became more spectacle than competition. The old man was a lock. He seemed subject to his own set of natural laws. "He eats different food from the rest of us," said one man to his buddies and their wives. "I think it's the swim trunks," said one of the women. "There must be some magic in them." Her husband smirked. "I'm not going to touch that one." They laughed uproariously. Though angled high above them, Vicky had heard every word. She smiled as she pressed both hands against the balcony railing and rocked gently into the ocean breezes. She raised her sight line and fixated on the nearly indistinguishable convergence of sky and ocean. There, in the blue blackness, a rain-slicked road superimposed itself like a slide lit on a projector screen. Sound effects joined the image. Automobile tires swished and then screeched in wild abandon, and the road flashed crimson. A moment later, the girl left her perch. The night air amplified the hum of activity on the boardwalk and the pool deck. Cigars pinched between lips or fingers poked the air like miniature torches, and the mingled scent of hair tonic, aftershave, and perfume turned the salt air sweet. Few noticed a young lady with shoulder-length hair and a hip-to-shin brace on her right leg as she asked for permission to enter at the gate. She had eluded the nurses and snuck down the fire escape at Seashore House, careful to maintain her balance and not clang her brace against the iron. She had walked here in her canvas lace-ups, her brace sparking the asphalt as she dragged her rear leg along the side street and then up the ramp that led to the elevated hotel pool. The air was electric as the throng leaned toward the swimmers lined up for the first event. Vicky felt that here in this dramatically lit space of shimmering water and packed humanity, possibility lived in the heart of every spectator, in the center of every rooting instinct, and in the fiber of each swimmer with the guts to match wills and test stamina. She was among them now, and the joy of anticipation that shone through her eyes gained her admittance through the gate. The burly cop watched her stake out a patch of concrete aside the cluttered rows, and, in that moment, wished for a daughter just like her. At the clap of the starting pistol, the old man and 5 other contestants knifed into the water to start the 50 crawl after they'd taken their marks, their toes curled over the concrete lip at the diving board end of the pool, a lane cordoned off for each. Their initial thump and splash raised a chorus of gasps. 5 of them thrashed through the water, a furious spray trailing, but the old man seemed to glide, smooth-muscled and long-limbed, as if he were still doing warm-ups. As he neared the opposite end, he swooped underwater and corkscrewed his body all in one motion, planting his feet against the submerged concrete and pushing off into calmer waters, a deft and balletic motion of timing and power. When it was complete, he was a full length ahead of the rest of the pack, still fighting the water as if it were a thicket. He finished the race a length and a half ahead of his closest pursuer. Cheering showered upon him, and he accepted it as his due. The capped swimmer had touched in second and freed her red hair from the confining elastic. Vicky thrilled at the sight of her in this arena of possibilities. The crowd roared a salute of surprise, many having been unaware of a woman in the competition. Vicky's eyes searched for the old man, but he already had left the pool and was nowhere to be seen. The 50 was in the books. The swimmers swathed themselves with towels and sat on low-slung benches placed in front of decorative planters. A different mix lined up for the second race, the 100, and as if instantaneously parachuted into place, there was the old man among them, breathing easily, the stillness of the ages about him. After he took this one by 3 lengths, those seeing the championships for the first time grasped what most accepted as an article of faith, that he was in a class by himself. Animal instincts singled out the superior, which he reinforced in the backstroke, and then the tedious 200 breaststroke, the least dynamic of races, his by just an arm length ahead of the capped redhead, but his nonetheless. The crowd bonded to him as if soldered to steel. He's got a hot hand tonight. He always does. How can he do that at his age? What age is that, Vivian? I don't know. Our age. He's actually older than us, a lot older. Whatever his age, he was all power and virility, a force conquering both the elements and human affections without a trace of ingratiation. Yet the adulation coexisted with a touch of sadness, even desperation. The people knew that infatuation was potent but fleeting. They realized that they were all moving targets subject to the erosions of time. Time was the unseen dimension that gradually changed every life. Time was the inevitability that compounded itself in tiny fractions until it overwhelmed. They all knew, or learned, that there was no defeating time, that it was the ultimate implacable enemy, that it had no more conscience than the wind. And yet here was the old man who had broken through the bounds of time. And Vicky had watched it all from her private spot apart from the crowd, but engulfed by its clamor. The old man was impervious to the shock waves of sound as he turned in her direction and seemed to be looking right through her. "It's time," his whisper repeated, and Vicky shuddered, but didn't move from her spot. Smelling a sham, a fix of some sort, the hawk-faced sports writer determined to get answers. This was a gambling town, after all. Below his pork pie hat, his greedy eyes searched for culprits. He made his way to the platform and flung his skepticism at the guests of honor. He accosted the meet's lone marshal, who wore a referee-striped jersey over a sizable paunch and took umbrage at the insinuation. Meanwhile, as the nurses at Seashore House completed their bed checks and scrambled to find their missing charge, Vicky watched the lady swimmer, finished for the night and wearing a pink cotton tracksuit over her bathing suit, her red hair abundant in the diffuse light, turn heads as she strolled down an aisle toward the locker room door at the base of the hotel. Thinking nothing of the encumbrance on her leg, Vicky shuffled forward to intercept her. "I saw you take second place in that race. You almost won." The woman smiled at her admirer. "Will you come and see me next year?" "I hope so. Yes." "Good. I will win the championship, if not next year, soon. It's only a matter of time. I would love for you to be out there rooting for me. I might be racing against you someday." Taken by the adolescent girl's touch of audacity, the woman smiled a smile of respect, free of condescension. "What's your name?" "Vicky." An impulse. "It's really Victoria." "Victoria. That's a glorious name." Behind them, the crowd noise surged, signifying that the final race was about to start. The woman placed her hand fondly on Vicky's shoulder and held it there a moment. She was almost shouting when she said, "See you next year." "I will be swimming like a fish by then," Vicky shouted back. Counting by years or mere moments, it was still the old man's time. Once again, the marshal crouched and the starting pistol reported. The 100 butterfly was the supreme test of grit and staying power at this late stage of the evening, the swimmers plunging and surfacing like porpoises, a searing at the lungs and muscles stretched like cables. And if the old man could finish first on this final trial to sweep the lot of them, if he could do that in the lights flickering across the pool and beaming high above from hotel windows, then he'd give these people, this crowd, the thrilling hope that, if they could hold on to it, they too might circumvent time. The exhausted swimmers felt their arms turn leaden as they gulped water in their exertions. The crowd's hoarse cries bordered on delirium. Halfway through the concluding lap, the old man seemed to vanish in the middle of the pool. Some speculated that he had plunged deep like some primeval shark, others that he was spiraling down to a watery grave. "Where is he?" screamed the faceless. "The magic is worn off," one man whooped, gin fumes shooting into the night air. Mortality struck like a giant pile driver. The whiff of an imminent knockout in the boxing ring or a kill in the bullfighting ring permeated the crowd, desperate for resolution, no matter the cost. The sports writer pushed close, but the beefy marshal shouldered him backward. 2 policemen joined the one at the gate, and the 3 of them fanned out across the deck, their eyes desperate to spy a girl with long brown hair, a handicapped girl, as described to them, a victim of polio or birth defects or something like that. Beyond hotel boundaries, the boardwalk crowd bulged as onlookers massed at the railing bobbed and twisted for a better angle. When a great cry of relief leaped from the pool deck, the ocean, cloaked in blackness, echoed in kind. Everybody, it seemed, left their seats to grab a fistful of spray and mark the victor, their everlasting champion. They bumped and jostled one another, frustrating the sports writer, swearing at them as he tried to elbow his way through. Officials and other guests of stature hugged one another on the platform. Celebrants everywhere rejoiced noisily. The PA announcer's strained voice was lost in the din. The police had failed to locate the girl with the long hair in or out of the water, and now stood in abject surrender over a detached leg brace as it swayed at pool's edge. "Where is she?" they stuttered. The crowd, caught up in the frenzy of the moment, was oblivious. As the commotion peaked, the old man tramped down the beach, back toward the sea. No one had seen him leave the pool. Though he'd been declared the winner, no one had even seen him touch in first in the grueling butterfly. But many, even some who had screamed for his demise moments earlier, swore that his face had shed years in the flush of victory. Now the crowd's affirmation thinned by distance. He walked on powdery sand bone colored in the moonlight. It soon coarsened and leveled into a firmer surface, wetted by spent waves. She waited for him at the mouth of the sea, her arms folded in a muscular pose, her head tilted to catch the rippling breeze full on. He drew closer and looked at her as if she were a priceless vase in danger of shattering. But it was his heart that threatened to burst. She lurched to hug him, but grabbed only air. "I miss you," she said. It felt like she'd wrenched her shoulder, but she didn't care. The force of her will kept her upright. "I love you." And now the old man's face came apart in sorrow. "I'm so sorry, Victoria." His form brightened to a glow. "You're my angel." When she dropped her arms and wobbled backward, she saw the planes of his face disfigure like separated puzzle pieces, the same disarray she glimpsed through the reflection in the spider-webbed windshield that night on the ruthless curve that had fractured her life and ended his. Only his steely eyes stayed in place, blazing in the moonlight. At this moment, there were two of her rushing through time. Beyond the beach and boardwalk and the dimming lights of the hotel pool, Victoria pushed back from the balcony railing and turned toward her cramped room of sustainment at Seashore House. But here at water's edge, she walked unfettered on the wet sand, no slips or stumbles or second thoughts, her movements buoyed by the rhythms of the sea.